All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our Round 4 live stream for the Farmers Insurance Open. Going to get you guys ready for all your exposure tomorrow with a look at the weather report, some of the stat averages out there from today, whether the morning guys got an advantage, maybe the PM guys did. We'll go through all of that over there for you guys, as well as the shots gained recap, a look at the stone and how you can use that for your Round 4 process, as well as any questions that you have down there in the chat and some line of construction towards the end to bring all of it together. So that's the table of contents for what's to come here over the next half hour. So first off, welcome on in. Hopefully you're having a fantastic Friday and ready to talk all the golf for Round 4 at this event. We've got a wide open leaderboard, a lot of slappies up there towards the top, and outside of Harris English, who's a proven tour winner, it's really anyone's game towards the top. So we'll talk about all that, how to handle that over there in your lineups. I see we already got a bunch of you down there in chat. We already got the Star Wars joke with Jay Steele. Welcome on in. What's going on? Nicholas, who's a member of the Novak Nation. What's going on? Ross, Colin, Steven, Benihana, and Nip. Also want to say that I agree with you, Colin. You said it might be one of the better showdown slates that we've had of the year, and I can't disagree with that. We've got so many guys that are in play for tomorrow and a whole lot of chalk that you can fade as well. So we'll talk all that here over the next half hour. I want to remind you guys how you can find all the tools that you're finding throughout these videos. If you guys want to see the stone that we're talking about later, all the projections over there on the SHIPIT Nation site, make sure you go to the link in the description of this live stream, the replay if you're watching it after the fact, and use code Luke10 when you're signing up for a discount off any membership. When you see all the different tools and different stats that we have over there on the stone for tomorrow, you're probably going to want to sign up. And if you use this code, it'll give you a discount off any membership, and it'll help support the channel as well. So I appreciate you guys for showing all the love here on the live streams that you do. But let's talk about all the stats for tomorrow. So let's take a look at the South course today. Only one course in play over here for the weekend. In the morning, played significantly easier than the afternoon. And while it was threesomes off of both tees, I thought it might be those twosomes off of one. We did not get that kind of setup. You saw that the first half of tee times played over 0.8 shots easier than what you had in the afternoon. In fact, it was nearly a 0.9 shot difference between the two waves. And that was without any sort of spread between the first and last tee time. And imagine if they do twosomes out there tomorrow. Now, I would imagine that with the threesomes all week, they probably do that once again. But those first few groups out, and I would say maybe even the first 3-4 groups out there on either side, clearly got an advantage over the later starters. Now, part of that could have been the choke factor of the guys up top. Also, the guys that hardly made the cut being a little bit more aggressive. Perhaps that's why the scoring average was a little bit higher, but it wasn't like a 0.2 shot difference, right? It wasn't like 0.67 under as opposed to like 0.47 under. It was a whole 0.9 shot advantage out there between the two golf courses. So that's when it starts to get into that significant factor. It's something that we want to consider over there for Round 4 Showdown. Now, the other part of it is that the placement points come into play. So we're going to have to take 2, maybe 3 or 4 guys up here in the top 5, top 10 out there in our showdown lineups, but mixing in a few guys that are from the first few groups out could be a good way to get different in terms of your ownership. Those guys are going to be a lot lower owned, but also to try and take advantage of this weather edge. And with the weather looking a little bit spicier tomorrow, I think that edge that today was mostly due to the receptiveness of the greens could get even bigger out there for tomorrow, because when you take a look at this HRRR forecast, it gets even stronger wind-wise as the day goes on. So early on when they're first teeing off, which I'm expecting to be around 9 a.m. local time, it might be a little bit before that when they have the first tee time tomorrow, but you can see the first 2, maybe even 3 or 4 hours of play, it's going to be sub 10 miles an hour of sustained winds. The rest of the day, it starts to creep up into that 13 to 15 mile an hour range, and the wind gusts go from about 10, 11 miles an hour there to a rate of around 20 miles an hour in the afternoon. So it's going to get harder and harder as the day goes on. And then the other aspect of this is that it's going to be a little bit cooler as well. So compared to the mid 60s temperatures that we've had for the last few days, it's going to be right right about 55 degrees at its maximum. So that's going to make the ball fly a lot shorter. I think it's going to make the golf course play significantly harder than what we had for today. And it still played pretty hard, right? Right about even par for a scoring average when it was all said and done. But I think Sunday, with the lower temperatures and the winds kicking up, it's not going to be quite like we saw for round 2. That was another level when it came to the wind, but something like 1.5, maybe even 2 strokes over par is, I think, within the realm of possibility. And it's worth mentioning with the Sunday Showdown slate, because when we have harder conditions, it's especially the case when we get to a major championship on a Sunday, the placement points tend to matter just a little bit more. When you're not going to have as many nuclear rounds with the scoring, those points that you're getting up there in the top 5, your winner, your second place points really matter on a slate like this, when second's essentially getting you 2 birdies worth of points, and then the winner's getting you nearly, well, it's like 2/3, I guess, or a little bit more than 2/3 of a birdie streak out there, but you're getting a significant amount of points for taking these guys towards the top end of the board that might not matter at a birdie fest. If you're at, let's say, like the Century, which we had the first week of the year, and you have a scoring average of 5 strokes under par, it's much more important to have the guys that are shooting -7, -8. Tomorrow, you might have to have the guys that are shooting even or -1 and that are finishing up there in the top 5. It's just going to be a harder scoring day. And once again, it's important to have that perspective heading into a slate and knowing how much you have to prioritize those placement points. A few other things I want to go through is the rest of the forecast, I guess, just to give you guys the full look when it comes to the weather. You can see they're all pretty much in agreement. They have the winds starting a little bit lower in the morning in all 6 cases, and then it getting spicier as the day goes on. Now, the timing of the wind kicking up is a little bit different from model to model, but in general, it's right around this 9-10 a.m. mark. So I like the consistency that we see across the models here. The temperatures are also rather consistent as well. You have a few that are getting closer to 60 degrees at a maximum temperature, but that is still significantly cooler than what we had for the first 3 days. So that affected the ball not flying as far is, I think, for sure going to be in play tomorrow. And they were mentioned it on the broadcast as well. They were talking about the forecast over there for the final round, and it looked pretty dreary in their forecast. So let's take a look at the shots gained metrics now. Actually, let me see if there's any questions down in chat before we deep dive some of the shots gained from today. What's going on, Anthony? Considering positional points, how low would I go for placement points? So if I'm looking for placement points tomorrow, I'm probably starting at the guys in the top 10, top 15. So in terms of a score, like these guys at -3 or better, if you shoot -2 tomorrow, I think that's going to be a really good round. A -2 round gets you to currently a T4 position, but with how hard the course is playing, I think that's going to be a top 5 or even a top 3 when it's all said and done. So I would say like -2 even the -1s, I would say would be live, because if they shoot -2, which gets them to like -3, that could be a top 5 finish or top 7 finish when it's all said and done. And, like a -2 round with like 5 birdies, something like that, I'm going out there and getting those top 10 placement points is probably going to be enough out there in those large field GPPs. So, if I'm trying to like fringe take guys, maybe take some guys at lower ownership, like the -1, -2s, I think even have potential for placement points. But if you're talking about your like stands up top, like your conviction plays, it's probably -3 or better. These guys that are T15 here. So that's everyone on here from Sam Stevens and up that I would include in that kind of conversation, because you shoot even a -1 round out there starting at -3 with how hard the conditions are supposed to be. I mean, I could see that being a top 5 finish, which is, I know it sounds crazy because -4 is only a T8 right now. And we're used to seeing this thing go the other direction, but it's the kind of slate where I think it's going to go the opposite direction with how hard the golf course is. So part of that's the forecast. Part of that is the temperatures going down. Let me get a sip of water and see what else is going on. Sounds confusing. I knew what you were saying, though, so no worries on that. Was there anything to starting at 10 or off of 1, like any advantage just starting on either side? I mean, we can look at it, but no. So if you take a look at the front 9, you did have a little stretch here where you could take advantage, but it wasn't like starting on 1 or 9 gave you that advantage, right? If you started on 1, you got that advantage. You started on 10, you were still going to finish with holes 6 through 9 there. So I didn't see any sort of advantage to starting on 1 versus 10, but always worth looking at, right? Insane day of golf. Pretty good for the Showdown ROI. I meant to mention that before. Ended up being a pretty decent day overall. Guys like Cage Lee, a lot of the guys that I took for a rebound based on their round one stats, ended up carrying my exposure. And surprisingly enough, it was my spend ups that really didn't get the job done. Like I played Ludwig in a lot of my Showdown lineups today, and he ended up being the stinker. And obviously had the flu. None of us knew that ahead of time. If I would have known that, it's easy to say, hindsight's 2020, that I would have taken him out of lineups. But yeah, if I pivot him to Hideki, I mean, hell, even if I pivot him to anyone else up top, like Keegan Bradley, any of those guys, I probably am sniffing a takedown today, if not taking down contest. So a little bit of a weird taste in my mouth after, but we'll take it. What's going on, Ross? Split tees, groups not announced yet, though. So, yeah, as expected, it'll be threesomes off of both tees. So if you're looking for that little bit of a weather edge, guys, that's going to be the people in the middle of the leaderboard. So if we go down here and take a look at it, it's approximately going to be like this, like -1, -2 range. So like guys around like a Bo Hostler, Chan Kim, these sort of players are going to be your first few groups off. So obviously they're going to announce them. You'll be able to check that out over there on PGAtour.com. But yeah, with the split tee setup, that's what it's looking like. They're out now. Okay, cool. Grazer nutting tomorrow. I'll see what you did there. Grazerman, he's a very aggressive player. In fact, if you take a look at the last 30, I think it's 32 rounds I ran for my prop analysis. Last 32 rounds, he's number one in the field in birdie percentage. Number two is Taylor Pendrith. I played Taylor Pendrith today in a lot of lineups. I avoided Grazerman, so maybe I go to Grazerman over there for round 4. Now, off memory, I don't think I have him in my lineups yet, but I may add him over here the next update. We'll see. What's going on, Ross? Patrick Rogers out here putting like a blind person. Yeah, let's take a look at the stats. I didn't catch that myself, but I'm assuming it's going to be a big red over there with the putter. And look at that. Holy shit. You weren't kidding, huh? Losing over 6 strokes over there with the flat stick. That feels like a good showdown play, though, right? If you're going to take somebody at super low ownership, he might be somebody you have to consider adding to the pool, because I have him at sub 5% ownership because he's way down the board, and you're going to have placement points. I know we talked about that plenty with the harder conditions, but a guy like Rogers, I mean, I showed a few on my Twitter/X earlier when I put out the announcement about my projections being up. I had guys like Suber out there in my player pool. Like I have some crazy names out there in my exposure to offset all that chalk that we're taking up top. So I think Rogers could be that kind of guy. Steven says, it's nice not to have a birdie fest to deal with. Yeah, it's a nice change after the recent weeks. Same game theory for a single entry. Yeah, we'll talk about game theory, all that sort of stuff a little bit later on. What's going on, Todd? He said, thoughts on Luke List for tomorrow? So yeah, I played him today with the course history angle, Todd. So he was actually somebody that I posted in my player pool on my site as a course history play today. And I mean, he played well today, so obviously it would have paid off if you used him. But the same thing applies for Sunday. He's the kind of guy that long term, if he's low owned at this golf course, I'm going to use him. If it's for main slate, I'll use him for main slate. If it's for a single showdown slate, I'll go ahead and do so too. Unfortunately, though, you're not getting him at low ownership for tomorrow. So on my site, I did give the bottom end of the 7K range over there on my projections, and I'm using him out there in my player pool. So he's a little bit higher owned than I probably would like. But as you mentioned, that course history is keeping me on him. So yeah, I got to say I'm buying on him, but it is going to be at higher ownership this time around. Like round 3 was the nutted spot to get to him. Ross says, nailed it, Bo in the first group out. Yeah, there you go. So just to go back to the leaderboard and show you guys that, this Bo Hostler group, so this range right here is going to be where you have guys teeing off. So I'm assuming Chan Kim is going to be one of the first few guys off as well. Guys like Baddeley, Goodwin, Blair, you get the point, right? This portion of the leaderboard is going to be the real hot pocket when it comes to tee times. If you're looking to take like 2, maybe even 3 pivots in your lineup, we're going to be circling back to these players to do so. And I can tell you in my player pool that I've got a bunch of those guys out there in my pool. Not all of them, right? There's just a handful that I'm going out there and using, but it's going to be a good way to get that leverage. Let's see. I think we're good on questions, caught up at least. All right, let's go through these shots gained metrics. So I'm going to go through the round 3 stats, take a look at what happened for today, because we had everyone playing the same golf course, which is the first time this happened the entire week. So let's go through the approach stats today, see who was out there striping the golf ball. Unsurprisingly, Hideki Matsuyama, number 1 in that category. Not only hit a few darts for birdie, but also saved par on numerous occasions after having to lay up after terrible tee shots. So though he didn't get the most out of his round, I mean, shots gained wise, this is the perfect stat profile. He's going out there, gaining on approach, losing with the putter. So you'd expect him to turn it around a little bit. I really have no red flags around Hideki. He's playing solid golf at this point. Really, the only problem with the play is that he might wake up tomorrow and withdraw if he goes out there and has a backache. So let's hope that he has his health under him, that same sort of thing. Same thing with Aubert. Aubert at the top is the same kind of question marks, an even bigger question mark with the flu-like symptoms that he's dealing with. Matsuyama, a little bit of a less risk, I would say, because he's been pretty good the last month. But I just got to say, like, it happens 5 times a year. If it happens tomorrow, it won't surprise me. I mean, hell, you guys remember Colin Morikawa was up in the top 5 at a golf tournament and had to withdraw on Sunday. I wouldn't throw that past Hideki. Let's just say that much. Joel Damon, pretty good stat profile, was a huge gainer on approach, lost over there with the putter. You had English with the nutted round of the day. He gained on approach and with the putter. So, I mean, that's what we're looking for, right? If you're going to go out there and shoot a super low round to make a ton of birdies, it's usually because you're setting up looks and then making those looks when you're setting them up for yourself. Harris English did exactly that today. So somebody like a Joel Damon, Hideki, if they can find that hot putter, they could go from a really good round like they posted today to something special like you had there with the Harris English. Another player that I want to point that out with would be a Andrew Novak down there. So you can see Novak was a little bit more of a gainer out there with the putter, but still set up a lot of looks, was solid with the ball striking, and then converted out there with the flat stick. So what we can look for in these shots gained profiles are the guys that just weren't making anything. And Patrick Rogers, if we just take a look at round number 3, I mean, look at this. Holy shit. It wasn't just the whole event that he's been losing putting. He lost nearly 6 strokes putting just today over there with his stats. And he gained over 2 strokes over there on approach. If you're looking for somebody that's essentially unowned as a little bit of a leverage play, like Patrick Rogers just seems like the perfect fit at that sort of number. You also have Andrew Putnam down here. You shouldn't call him Putnam, I guess, because he couldn't make a putt out there today, losing nearly 2 strokes in that category. Another player that could be in for some putting regression. And if so, could be in for a really good round. Sam Ryder, you can say a lot of the same things about. I looked for him today to go out there and have a good round. I used him in a lot of different lineups. Even some of my higher dollar stuff had some Sam Ryder. Not only was the stat profile really good from his first round at the South Course, but he's also a good course history guy. So just like Luke List before, Sam Ryder's on my course history list. And I'll just tell you, I'm playing him over here in my round 4 lineups. He gained out there a bunch on approach. He lost 1.3 with the putter. And I think what makes Sam Ryder a better play than Luke List, and why, I'd rather talk him up as a play as opposed to Luke List, is he's not going to garner all that ownership. Just to give you guys an idea, I posted this on my Twitter, so I don't feel too bad leaking this over here on the live stream. Luke List, I have it 12.8% owned. That's my personal projections, right? That's not over there on the SHIPIT Nation site. I've got Sam Ryder at 1.8%. So it's not even in the same stratosphere when it comes to that ownership, which is why I think somebody like Sam Ryder could be a good leverage play. So just kind of going through the shots gained metrics, we can find some sleeping giants that, if they could just flip one, sometimes it's 2 categories, could go out there and have a really low round. A few other impressive stat profiles would be a Chris Ventura, gained on approach, lost nearly 4 strokes putting. Like, that's a tough scene, right? He just wasn't making anything out there today. If he even putts to a neutral, that would be a huge improvement. A Sungjae Im, gained on approach, lost over there with the putter. The approach play was really good the last few holes as well. So if you're looking for a little bit of a bounce back candidate, like Sungjae Im, I think would make a lot of sense. And I guess just to tell you, you could look for guys like Gobert up top to go out there take it as like what some of your conviction plays. For me, it's guys like Hideki and Sungjae Im. Like, that's who I'm building my lineups around, because they showed us a sustainable kind of shots gained profile over there from round to round. And if they have any sort of improvement on the greens, and both have been a lot better on the greens recently, then they're going to have a pretty low round tomorrow. Luke Clanton, you could say the same thing about. He was going out there hitting a bunch of really good iron shots, lost 1.4 strokes with the putter. A Chris Gotterup, the same thing. He gained over there on approach. He lost nearly 2 strokes putting. almost all these players that we've talked about on here are in my player pool. So that's my personal process. I try and find ball strikers that have putting regression coming. That's just what I've done all my entire career when it comes to PGA DFS. Doesn't always work, right? You're always going to have good and bad slates, but I've made a pretty good living off doing it over these last 4 or 5 years. So looking at those approach poppers, always something you want to do from round to round, as it's the most consistent shots gained metric from day to day. I also want to look at some of the pop putters. So guys that maybe putted above their baseline, guys that could come back down to earth tomorrow would be players like a Cage Lee, Kevin Tway towards the top end of that list. A Brandt Snedeker, somebody I used in my showdown lineups today, who I've got to say, I didn't feel great about the play. Like when I put him down as a yes, I was like, it's only because of the course history. He's won here twice, if you guys don't know. Brandt Snedeker around Torrey Pines, which makes no sense if you know this golf course, right? It's super long off the tee. You have to be a bomber off the tee. He is the exact opposite, right? Sure off the tee, not even very accurate when it comes to his driving accuracy. But for whatever reason, he loves this place. He loves Torrey Pines. He's made a career around this place. He gained 3 strokes putting and just carried himself there, right? Didn't really do anything else. That's what course history guys do. Sometimes they go out there and just have spike putting rounds. I wouldn't count on it for round 4 though, right? There's a reason why I used him today. I'm not going to play him tomorrow. Like after gaining 3 shots gained putting, like no thank you. That just feels like a trap. Guys here like Novak, English, that gained 3 strokes when it came to the putting, like these are prime fade candidates. And while I'm not going to give you guys my entire player pool, we're not going to talk about like everyone I'm fading. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm not playing Novak. I'm not playing English out there in my player pool. Both putted way above their baselines. They're the kind of place that I could see coming back down to earth. And I've got Harris English and Novak over 20% owned out there in GPPs. So if you're looking to make that game theory pivot, get off of some of the popular players, like, you know, you've got to find, you know, players to take as chalk, guys to go out there and avoid as chalk. I think the shots gained metrics are the best way to do so, rather than just like blindly guessing what they're going to do, right? Like we can have all the hunches, we want all of that. Really, the stats are the most black and white way that we can go about it. Let's take a look at the bottom of the putting list. We know Patrick Rogers, Chris Ventura down there towards the bottom, but a few other guys that could have bounce back days. Ryan Gerard, Isaiah Salinda, somebody that I took a few shots on today. He had really good off the tee stats. He's a flusher off the tee, but just could not buy a putt for his life today. So like these sort of players, Ryan Gerard, Salinda, Suber, who I'm using in lineups for tomorrow, these sort of players are perfect bounce back candidates. So just like the top end of the list are guys that you might want to avoid. Guys like a Taylor Pendrith, Goddard, Putnam, Keegan Bradley, Jason Day didn't have the best putting days today, are players that you could look for a little bit of a bounce back from. So the shots gained metrics, always a good thing to look at. Around the green, the same thing, right? If you gained a bunch around the green, that was likely a little bit of luck. So I know we were talking about Ventura before, but you got a little lucky around the green. Same thing with players like a Taylor Pendrith, Vincent Norman, even Sam Ryder got a little bit lucky around the green. And the vice versa is true, right? We can look at some of the guys that lost a lot around the green, like a Frankie Sapin, guys like Rosner got a little bit shafted in that category. Just like the putting, a lot of around the green comes down to chance as well. So those are the kind of categories that I'll give a little bit of a pass to players for. Won't overly criticize them for having a poor performance. And this ball striking, though, is really what I'm being nitpicky with. I want good ball strikers. I want guys that are flushing the ball. And if we want to combine off the tee and approach, just to go out here and look at some of those poppers, that's where guys like Jason Day really pop up, and Aldrich Palkgeider as well. Crazy hole out that he had on, I believe it was his 12th or 13th hole today. Either way, 170-yard approach shot that was absolutely perfect. These guys towards the top end of the ball striking list are worth some consideration as well. So that's it for the shots gained recap. In terms of what we're looking at over here on the stone, you're going to have your round 4 expectations, which are going to be especially helpful because round 4 is a little bit of a different beast, right? Round 3 historical, round 2, round 1 historical stats, you know, they're good to incorporate into your process. Round 4 data is especially helpful though, because that's where the pressure of trying to win, the pressure of trying to finish top 5, top 10 comes into play. And I think it's a lot more useful than what you have in rounds 1 through 3. So obviously this is the round 3 stone. This is not for round 4, right? We're not going to give you the free stone over here on the live stream. That wouldn't be right over there to all the members. Again, code Luke10 if you're signing up for a discount off any membership. But the round 4 historical is going to be a real good thing to look at. And if you're trying to find some bounce back candidates, maybe guys like Patrick Rogers, right, who didn't have his best performance today, but you're trying to take some leverage to offset some chalk, these bad round regression guys are what I'd be looking at. So I know I mentioned that the last few days, guys trying to get back to it after a really windy day. But for round 4, if you're trying to find pivot plays, this is the category that I would really be looking at. And because we have the entire field on the South course, you're going to have the entire approach series to work with. So those really positive true approach deltas are the kind of things that I'm going to be looking at over there on that right side there. You want to look at some of the putting deltas, all of that as well. All extremely useful over there in your showdown process. So make sure when you're signing up for the SHIPIT Nation to use that code Luke10 and you'll get that discount off any membership. Let me see if there's any specific questions. If not, we're going to talk some lineup construction and tie this all together. They are playing the South course, as Jay Steele said. Decky looks locked in. He does, especially with those irons. KH Lee bounce back day. Any love for him to stay the course one more round? So the only thing against that would be the fact that he had those really good putting numbers. So just to go back to that, if you're just winning us, he did gain 3.5 strokes putting, and then he lost on approach today. So I would say that the shots gain profile, at least from round 3, leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's only one of the first 3 rounds, right? He had a whole other 2-round sample size where he went out there and posted some really good golf. So I would say that he could keep it going, of course, right? That's always the case with these elite tier tour players, but the stat profile isn't my favorite. I will say that though. All right, let's talk through some lineup construction. So in the large field GPPs, what I like to do on Sunday Showdown is to knock my placement points out of the way right away, because depending on the contest you're entering, you're going to need a different amount of these placement points. If you're in a single entry, you probably want 3 of the top 5, top 10 over there in your lineup. I'd probably say top 15, actually. You want 3 of those guys over there in your lineup. If you're in the large field GPP and you're trying to beat 5 to 10,000 other entries, you might need 4 guys towards the top end of the board. But how hard the conditions are going to be, those placement points are going to matter. So if you're going to try and have the absolute nuts, I might even try and take 4 guys towards the top, which is going to be chalky. So our last 2 spots, we're really going to have to be thinking about getting different to the field. So this lineup is going to be from one of those really big contests, like for example, this nearly 12,000 entry contest that we have in the big $25. If you're trying to enter this kind of contest, you have to be thinking about building for the nuts. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to take 3 guys starting in the top 15, and then I'm going to take somebody at -1 who is going to be one of the first few groups off, but is going to have a chance to finish top 5. If you can have a really good day, that's going to be like our 4th placement point guy. And, that's going to be a lower owned player as well. So it's kind of going to be our 3rd pivot that we have on top of the other 2. So let's go ahead and do that one first, because I would argue that if you can get one of these -1 guys right, if you can get them to shoot -2, -3, which I told you could be that top 5 finish, this could win or lose you the GPP. So for the sake of this, just for the meme, I'm going to throw in a Bo Hostler, good old Dumpy Bo, who I love to make fun of over there on my channel. I'm going to throw him in there because he's starting at the perfect spot on the board. He's $8,900. So, if you're spending up, a lot of people are going to flock to the chalk rather than playing somebody like Bo. And he's going to be super low owned. I guess just to give you an ownership number, let me actually find that in good old Dumpy Bo Hostler. So I've got him at, where's he at? I guess I'm blind. I can't see it on here. Do the good old Control F to find it faster. So he's there at 12.2% ownership in my projections. It's going to get you a little bit of differentiation there. So let's throw him in there. We're going to take a few more chalkier guys towards the top, which are going to be like more of your traditional flag plants towards the top end of the board. Let's go with a Sanjay M as another one of our spend ups. Let's go with Chris Ventura, who we already mentioned the shots gained metrics looks pretty damn good for. And then let's throw in Matthias Schmid there at $7,500. By the way, Schmid's ball striking stats were also pretty solid over there for round number 3. So now we've got 4 guys here who could theoretically finish in the top 5. We're going to need one of these bottom 3 to go out there and win. So it's probably Matthias Schmid that we're hoping goes out there and wins in this kind of lineup. And then a Sanjay M, a Chris Ventura, we're hoping that they can finish top 5, maybe even top 3, starting there at top 8. So when you're building your lineup, it's good to kind of know what you're building for, right? Kind of building for a script like you would over there for NFL DFS. And then now for our last 2 spots, and you can see we have quite a bit of salary left, which we could leave salary on the table if we wanted to, but it does give us an opportunity to be pretty aggressive about what we do here. So maybe let's think about a Hideki. I guess that'd be a little bit expensive to go out there and take, but maybe throw in, we want a little bit lower ownership too. I know somebody asked about Grazerman before, but this is like the perfect spot for a Max Grazerman. If you needed to take somebody that's a little bit more expensive to spend most of your salary, but you still need to get different as one of your last few pivots, that Grazerman would make a whole lot of sense. Just to give you his ownership number, I'll tell you that I have him at sub 10% ownership over there in my projections. So him combined with the fact that we went with, a lower owned Bo Hostler as our first man in, it's going to get us a little bit different there. And then now for our last man in, as long as we're taking somebody that's sub 5% owned, if they're sub 3% owned, even better over there in GPPs, we're going to be totally fine when it comes to the ownership. So a Quaven, if you wanted to take the young amateur, he'd probably make a whole lot of sense as a last man in. But if you left a little bit of salary on the table, and let's say you used a Ryan Gerard, who, as we mentioned a little bit before, lost a bunch of strokes putting today. If he goes out there tomorrow, has a better putting day, could be in for a really low round. If you used him as your last man in, who I have at sub 5% ownership, you're going to be totally fine over there in the large field GPP. You're going to have the kind of placement points that we're hoping for towards the top end of the board, a couple pivots and guys like a Hostler and a Grazerman. You're leaving $200 on the table. That's going to help us with not duplicating ourselves. And we're taking a Ryan Gerard at sub 5%. Who's really that big piece of leverage that we're hoping for. So, and you can see at T51, he's not going to have the best tee time. He's not going to have the best chance to really go up there and get placement points. But if Ryan Gerard shoots -2 with like 5 birdies, and by the way, I think -2, 5 birdies should be your goal for most of your players out there tomorrow. You can do that sort of thing. You're going to be a near optimal play with how hard the conditions are. So that's what I'm looking for over there in my large field GPPs. If I'm playing in a single entry where I don't have to have the absolute nuts, I don't know if I'm making a rule to force in 3+ guys towards the top end of the board, but I'm still okay with having 3-4 guys towards the top end of the board. The placement points are going to be really helpful on a slate like this. And in terms of your actual projections over there for Sunday, it's something that I account for over there in my projections. The placement points, those sort of players that are towards the top end of the board are the best projecting plays on the slate, because the placement points are a higher percentage of their average score than what we typically have for Sunday Showdown. So it's a little bit of a different slate at a harder golf course like this, especially if you're new to the Showdown format. Like maybe you just started playing golf here in 2025. When the events get harder, like what we have here in at Major Championships coming up, these guys at the top, there's some pretty good plays when it comes to the Showdown perspective. So that's all I've got over here for the Showdown live stream. I'll see if there's any last second questions to go over. And if not, we're going to hop on out of here. Looks like we're good on the questions. So we're going to go ahead and cut it off at that. Best of luck over there with all of your exposure for Saturday. I know it's ending a day early to give us Sunday over there for NFL, which, by the way, is going to be an absolute blast with those 2 games. So make sure you guys sign up over there at the SHIPIT Nation if you haven't already for access to the Stone, all the golf projections over here for tomorrow, as well as all the NFL projections and all the sports that you see there listed, whether it's NBA, MMA, NHL, all those different sports that we have on the graphic. All of them are covered over there at the SHIPIT Nation for a very fair price tag. So if you use code Luke10, I'll give you that discount. But that's all I've got, guys. Appreciate you stopping by. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe so you don't miss any of the content to come. And let's have ourselves the rest of the year.